Brady, you're muted.
Dang, ruined the intro. But what's up, guys? Welcome to Public Sports Radio for the new DFS show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, where me, Weezy, Z, and Luke break down this upcoming card from a DFS perspective and give our predictions on the fights as well. Also, be sure to leave a like and subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. I think we're approaching like 9K subs, so hopefully hit 10K in the near future. That'd be sweet. So you do not miss out on all the content throughout the week. And if you have not yet, go check out Stat Diggers, where me and Uncle Weezy go balls deep into every fight. Me and Uncle Weezy did that show last week, so got in very, very early. And of course, here on the show, we're going to do something different. We aren't going to spend a couple hours breaking it down fight by fight. We're going to talk about the most important information and get all the meat off the bone in what should be around an hour show. We're also going to implement in something new, where at the end of the video, we're going to give our best lineups and we're going to compete against each other. We're going to keep track of the scores for the week and for total as well. So it's going to be very fun there as well. And then we'll answer any final questions you guys have at the end of the video. We're going to talk about the fights to target, the fights to fade, a fighter to fade, favorite dog, favorite GPP play, favorite cash play, favorite value play, favorite dart throw, and of course, answer those questions at the end. So we shall kick it to Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, what is up? How was your week off, and are you looking forward to this card?
Yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to this card. Like, I look forward to every single card, every single opportunity to gamble and play some Draftkings. You know, this is a very interesting card. A lot of closely lined fights, and in my opinion, the widest lined fight is a favorite that I wouldn't touch. So this is going to be a really picky week for Draftkings in terms of trying to find some guys that you think are going to win fights. A lot of these fights look like they're going to score about the same to me. So I'm going to concentrate on the fights that are going to try to finish here and really try to concentrate on those fighters that I think are going to finish, because this is a really tough card. I'm not sure what you guys are thinking.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough card for sure. Luke, what is up with you, and how was your week off?
Well, I wouldn't say it was much of a week off because we had PFL and Bellator, so I was out there slaving, getting through research on those cards. But yeah, definitely an ironic week off from the UFC, but ready to get back after it.
My mic wasn't plugged in. What's up, Z? How you doing? I know you did very well on the week off with PFL and Bellator, right?
Yeah, I had a good week. Could have been a lot better if that Guerder versus Bestia fight had ended. That was a big swing, but yeah, coming off a couple of good weeks. And I know you had a pretty good week last week at UFC as well, man. So congrats to you, Brady.
Yeah, congrats to you. I saw you had a good week as well at that event as well. So good for you. I think we all did pretty well last week as a whole. Do want to shout out the chat real quick before we get started. Nigel Lee in the chat saying, knock, knock, anyone home? We are home. Ryan Grant in the chat as well. We have Valerie Marcel in the chat. Monk MMA, Josh. We have Chris in the chat as well. Dave and Chris as well. What is up, you guys? If you guys can leave a like, that'd be much, much appreciated. And I say we get into it. I say we start with... Let's start with the fight to target. We shall start with Luke. What is your fight to target for UFC Vegas 34?
As always, I think there's probably quite a few you could go with on this card, but for me, it is Chase Sherman versus Parker Porter. The fight as a whole is tied for the highest implied probability of finishing inside the distance on the card at roughly 70%. Between both guys' careers since 2016, their fights don't hit the card 75% of the time. Sherman has scored 100-plus points in 2 of his 3 UFC wins, and Porter put up 106 points in his only UFC win as well. Both guys tend to block punches with their face, throw a decent amount of strikes, and have shown to be potent finishers as well. In regards to Sherman, he's got that really nice calf kick that he's went to religiously in recent years, which has shown a lot of credence to him winning his fights. Porter stands heavy on that lead leg. I think Sherman's going to be able to get off on that, which is also going to set up his hands, if not actually finish him with kicks. Conversely, even with Porter, you know, he's going to throw some strikes as well. He is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Haven't seen a ton of Sherman on his back, so if he does shoot takedowns, maybe Porter has a path there to score as well. In general, I think whoever wins this fight is going to end up on the optimal lineup and score very well.
Yeah, that's the one thing that does concern me is the possible ground game of Sherman. How is he off his back? And what happens if Porter is able to take him down? But for the most part, I'm with you there. I think it's a great fight to target. Weezy, what are you on? What is your fight to target for the week?
I'm going to be targeting the Kelleher Pilarte fight here. We got about this one looks like it's the 3rd most likely to finish inside the distance. And the other 2 that are most likely to finish inside the distance, the favorite is priced higher. So the Knight Cherant fight is supposed to finish inside the distance, but Knight's 9,400, and also the Sherman Porter fight, which Luke just talked about, also just about to finish inside the distance at about 2/3. So, but you got to pay $9,200 for Sherman, $9,400 for Knight, when you could get somebody like Kelleher at $9,000. And in terms of Pilarte there at $7,200, he's pretty explosive. He's pretty long. It's a weird stylistic matchup. And Brian Kelleher, when he does lose, he tends to get finished inside the distance. So I do like that fight to target. I think it'll be a little bit sneakier since it's only the third most likely to finish inside the distance instead of in the top two. But I think it'll be a high-paced fight, a lot of action, and could be a lot of potential grappling exchanges as well. So I think it'll be a really good fight that'll maybe be under-owned to the other two that I mentioned, but will have some really good scoring and a high probability to finish inside the distance.
There you go. Z, how about you? What is your favorite fight to target for UFC Vegas 34?
I'm actually going to target the Pantoja versus Royval fight. I think despite it being at flyweight, it's going to put up a ton of points. I think it could be a really high-paced scramble situation on the mat, and I wouldn't put it past Pantoja to finish Royval on the feet. So from a pick perspective, I'm leaning with Pantoja there, but I think if you take either guy, you have a pretty good chance of racking up a ton of points if they get the win, you know. Again, just tons of transitions. It's flyweights, could put up a lot of striking volume, and yeah, I think it's going to score highly.
Yeah, on top of that, I think it's probably the best fight on the card as well. I'm really looking forward to just watching that fight as a fan. As far as my fight to target, it's going to be Ramiz Brahimaj going against Sasha Plotnikov. A -160 fight doesn't go to decision. And the problem with Brahimaj is you take a look at this guy outside the UFC, and this guy is an absolute beast. He's picking up guys, he's slamming them, a great grappling, a 100% finish rate, all of them coming by submission. He comes into the UFC against Max Griffin, and I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? Because he shoots 0 takedowns against Max Griffin. Like literally the only time he's ever won was by submission, and he goes for 0 takedowns. In this fight, if he goes to that wrestling, if he goes to that grappling, I think he's going to look like a huge favorite there. It's just, can you really trust him? So if he does go to that wrestling, if he does go to that grappling, I think there's a very good chance that he gets a finish. Sasha Plotnikov has been finished in all 3 of his losses, 2 by knockout. I don't think he has the best chin, and then 1 by submission just recently by Impa. And then on the flip side, if he decides for some reason whatsoever to go in there and shoot 0 takedowns once more, I think at that point, Sasha Plotnikov can win. I think he's the better striker. I think he has the better gas tank. Either way, I probably see a finish here, and I probably see it scoring pretty well for the winner. But for me, I'm more on the Brahimaj side. But again, can you go out there and trust him to go out there and get takedowns? I really don't know, but hopefully he does. Anything else you guys want to mention? Anything else that stuck out? All right, we shall move on. So we will go to the fight to fade, and we will start with Z. What is your fight to fade?
All right, don't take this too seriously, but I will be fading Roberts versus Bahamundes in every sense of the word. I have so much PTBD on this fight. I don't want to look at tape. I don't want to even think about these guys. For me, I bet them both at chalk, and I lost on both of them at chalk. So personally, I want no part of this fight from a betting perspective, from a DraftKings perspective. I'm just letting these two guys fight it out between each other, So not the most, not the most in-depth breakdown or anything, but yeah, I don't want any part of that fight.
Yeah, don't blame you. I'm personally on the Roberts side quite highly. I think he's going to have a massive advantage on the mat. I think the striking is going to be pretty close as well, but I think on the mat, like, Roberts has legit grappling. I know he's been submitted in his last 2 fights, but I don't think this guy has a chance on the ground. So I think Roberts for me, but I'm kind of with you on the Bahamundes side. I'm not really interested in it. As far as Luke, what is your fight to fade?
I guess off the top on this card, in general, if you're building like 150 lineups, I don't think there's a fight I'd particularly fade. But if you're going like 10, 20 lineups, here's my selection. Pichel versus Hubbard. Their fights, I think it's projected to go the distance roughly 69% of the time. Pichel has been finished in both of his pro losses, but he got dropped on his head by Rustam Khabilov, and then ran on the mat by Gregor Gillespie, who has probably one of the most elite top games in the UFC, 2 of which, components that Austin Hubbard just doesn't really bring. Hubbard has been submitted twice, only once in the UFC, but also by a black belt in Joe Selecki as well, who kind of backpacked him and submitted him that way. Pichel is a black belt now, I believe, as well, but pretty much when he goes to the wrestling, it's more just positional control, grinding, that type of deal. He hasn't submitted anybody since 2012 back on the Ultimate Fighter. coupled with Austin Hubbard actually surviving on the mat for a full 3 rounds with Brahimaj as well, who is an ADC high-level black belt as well. So he's not completely incompetent defensively, clearly based on that fight. And then just in general, both guys have shown to be incredibly durable and tough on the feet. I think it's going to be a higher action-based fight where I don't necessarily think the guys score poorly, but in a card where I think there's a ton more significant finishing upside surrounding them. And once again, fight's largely expected to go the distance. This is one I would look to stay away from.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Luke. Same thing for me. That my fight to fade is going to be Vinc Pichel and Austin Hubbard, and I definitely agree that there's I really struggled to find a fight that I wanted to fade on this card. I think really like all fights are probably in play, but yeah, this fight is the least likely to end inside the distance. I agree with you that I don't think it scores terribly. I'm actually quite high on Pichel here. I know he's 38 years old, but I think he's going to have the grappling advantage. The age does scare me a little bit, but I think he can get takedowns here. I do think he's the better grappler, but it's going to be a scrappy fight. It's going to be a close fight. I also don't think anybody's getting finished as well. I think it goes the distance. I don't think it scores terribly, but I don't think it has like that 100-point upside. So if I had to pick one fight, I'm with you. It's going to be Vinc Pichel versus Austin Hubbard. Weezy, what's your fight to fade?
I'm basically echoing the sentiments of Brady and Luke here in that I'm going with Hubbard, Pichel, but also with the caveat that I don't really want to fade any of these fights. But if you have to choose one and you don't see a lot of difference between any of the fights, you kind of just pick the one that's least likely to finish inside the distance. That's definitely Hubbard, Pichel. And I really I'm with Luke in terms of I just think that Hubbard doesn't have the kind of style in order to beat Pichel. When we've seen Pichel lose, like he mentioned, it's to Gillespie and Hobylov, and Hubbard doesn't have that kind of a game. So I do think Pichel wins this fight. I think he can score actually very well in a decision victory. But in terms of any of these fights that I think is most likely to go to decision, it's Hubbard, Pichel. That would be the one if you put a gun to my head that I would fade. But I'm not fading any fights on this card in 150 max tournament because there's just too much variance and too many close lines on this particular card.
Yeah, I'm with you. Anything else you guys wanted to add? All right, so we shall move to the fighter to fade. I struggled to really find a fighter to fade, but if I had to pick one, it would be Austin Hubbard. He has like a 55% finish rate. I don't really see him finishing Vinc Pichel, and I am picking Vinc Pichel to win outright. Like we mentioned in the last segment, I think this fight does go the distance. I do think it's somewhat competitive, but I do think that Pichel is going to get the better of the grappling exchanges. If Austin Hubbard does win, I see him, basically stuffing takedowns, keeping on the feet, out striking Pichel, which again, I don't see that really scoring high. So although I did really struggle to find a fighter to fade, if I had to pick one, I will say it's Austin Hubbard. So give me Austin Hubbard for my fade of the week. Z, what is your fade?
I will be fading Fabio Cherant here. Not that I'm super high on William Knight, but I just don't really see the process to Cherant's game. I think he's not ready for this level. And, William Knight, say what you will, but he is very strong. He is, explosive. I don't want to say a good grappler, but if he gets in dominant position, he's going to finish you. So, I just don't see Fabio Cherant having a very honest chance to win this fight. And so I don't think he's going to put up any points this week.
Fair. Weezy, what is your fighter to fade?
I'm with you on this one, man. I'm going with Austin Hubbard for all the reasons that you said. I don't think Hubbard's got the type of game that's going to really give Pichel problems. I see Pichel winning this fight by decision, and I see Hubbard probably spending a lot or at least a very good portion of this fight on his back because Pichel is a very, very efficient wrestler. He's got a great top game, and in his most recent performance, he was taking Jim Miller to the ground, completely unafraid of Jim Miller's ground game. And he swam down there very well with Jim Miller. If he can do that with Miller, I think he can easily stay safe on top of Hubbard. I like Pichel to win this fight by decision. I don't like Hubbard to stay on his feet a lot. I don't like him to grapple. So I think he'll be a low-scoring, mid-priced option. I think that's the guy I would probably have the lowest percentage of.
Sounds good. And then Luke, who is your fighter to fade?
So once again, disclaimer, if you're building 150 lineups, don't think there's a fighter to do it. I would largely agree with you guys in Hubbard, but I wanted to be a little contrarian, so bring out the pitchforks here. Marco Madsen at 9.1K as a potential contrarian fade. There's multiple reasons why I'm saying this. Once again, large field builds. He's surrounded by Knight, Sherman, and Kelleher in that 9K range, who are all favored to win inside the distance from 45 to 55% of the time, whereas Madsen actually has the worst inside the distance line on the entire card at plus 440. He has scored well in his 2 UFC fights, scoring 91 and 106. But from a stylistic perspective, Guida is the first real wrestler or grappler he's ever fought who perceivably Madsen might not be able to just go out there and toss around. And then coupled with the fact that Guida also stuffs takedowns at 68%. When his fights are in the grappling, he is in control positions 82% of the time. Madsen's only minus 170 on the money line to win. So at 7.1K, for Guida in comparison to Madsen at 9.1K, you're already paying a premium on Marco Madsen in terms of his just general odds value. And like I said, he's not really heavily favored to win this fight inside the distance, and perceivably a guy who's going to put up more resistance against him than any other past opponent to potentially counter his best part of his game. So at 9.1K, I would rather pay up for Kelleher, I'd rather pay up for Knight, and I'd rather pay up for Sherman.
Yeah, I think the big thing with that, I think Mark Madsen could potentially be the highest owned fighter on the slate as well. So yeah, if you fade Mark Madsen and say it's a single entry, 20 max, I think you're getting very, very different, because I think it's either Mark Madsen, maybe Cannonier for the 2 highest, but yeah, Mark Madsen's going to have a ton of ownership. So I don't hate it. I'm high on Madsen myself, but you're making a lot of good points there. If he does, not hit that $900 price tag, if he does not hit 100 points, there's a bunch of great options up there. And again, he's going to be very, very chalky. So anything else you guys want to mention? All right. Quiet today, guys. All right. So we'll get to the favorite dog, and let's start with Z. What is your favorite dog of the week?
I'm going to just parlay what Luke said and take Guida as actually my favorite dog of the week. Not that there's a ton. Like, this to me is a pretty tricky card to make DraftKings lineups and to bet. But and I did watch your balls deep breakdown, Weezy, on Guida and Madsen. But I'm with Luke here. I think Madsen's only had a couple fights at this level, and one was a very quick win, and the other one he gassed out in the third. Conversely, like Guida was a 40-fight veteran when Madsen made his debut, and I know he has the Olympic wrestling background and credentials, but I could see Guida definitely giving him some problems. Maybe not early, but it could be the type of fight where he gets taken down in the first, but does enough to make Madsen work, and he might be fresher going into the second. Maybe he gives up the first half of that round, then starts to turn the tide, and then you've got 1-1 potentially with Madsen falling apart, whereas Guida is, he's always had incredible cardio. And let's be real, as of late, he's finding a home for that right hand. It's one of those veteran weapons he's been able to develop over time, and I just see him being pretty effective with it. It's not the prettiest thing, but the way he feints and throws it and finds the mark, it was impressive to me, at least in his last couple fights. So yeah, give me Guida as a dog. Could do a lot of volume, could put up a lot of volume, has a potential to finish late, although it's not a huge potential. But when I'm looking at other dogs on the card, he is really just my favorite option there.
Yeah, it seems like there aren't many dogs that really stick out. Luke, what is the dog that stuck out to you here?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think there's a couple you can mention. So this is actually more of like a leveraged based dog play. Sasha Palatnikov at 7.7. Definitely a risky play for sure. I definitely know that going in, that Brahimaj is one of the better ITD lines of the card. He is the better grappler here. He is live to go out there and get an early finish, but the 3 times we have seen Brahimaj get extended past that 7.5 minute mark, he's lost every single time. And we did just see, not a completely similar archetype in his fight with Kosi, but Kosi gassed after 1. He took over the fight and was able to finish. He's also been a hard 25 minutes back on the regional scene before. So just in general, I'm always very skeptical about these early finisher type guys. And I don't think Palatnikov is actually lost on the ground. I know he did just get subbed in his last fight by Impa, but he actually got clipped prior to getting taken down, which I think kind of was the catalyst to him actually getting subbed. It's not like it got taken down. Shoulders on the mat, passed, back take, choke. I don't know. I think at 7.7K, it's interesting. I think he's, only plus 110 or so to just win the fight. Actually is plus 250 inside the distance line. And he scored 113 points in that Kosi fight as well. And we have seen Brahimaj slow late. So even actually in a decision, Palatnikov can score extremely well too. And to your point, even talking about Brahimaj and how frustrating it was in his last fight, homeboy didn't attempt a takedown in his debut. So now I have extreme fight IQ questions with the guy. I don't think there's any guarantee that he goes out there and shoots takedowns. He should. That would maximize his win condition. But, there is that looming question mark there as well. So I think at 7.7K, I think it could be an interesting leverage play because I think Brahimaj is going to be heavily owned at 8.5.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm staying away from the money line of Brahimaj this week because of the fight IQ questions I have and also the cardio questions I have as well. For me, my favorite dog is going to be Brandon Royval. Z talked about it a little bit. I think it's going to be a very exciting back and forth fight. I think the winner is going to score very, very well. I think it's going to be a lot closer than the line does indicate. 7,300, I think it's going to be a back and forth war. And I do notice that Pantoja does slow down as the fight goes on. And, Royval brings like a very unorthodox, wild style and tons of volume with that as well. He's a very good grappler, as is Pantoja. I just think it's a very close, competitive fight that, I think the first 2 rounds are going to be very close, but I think if it goes to the third, Royval can possibly take over. I'm not saying he's going to finish Pantoja because Pantoja is as tough as they come, and I think like 28 fights, the dude's never been knocked out. He's never been submitted. I don't really see that changing, but, Royval does have like a 92% finish rate, so maybe he could finish him, but I think it's going to be a very close fight. I do think it goes to decision, and maybe Royval can take those second 2 rounds, maybe mix in the first round as well. So close fight, and outside with the dog at 7,300. Weezy, what is your favorite dog?
I've got listed Parker Porter here as my favorite dog in the night, and there's a couple reasons for that. Chase Sherman's been really good thus far in the UFC at keeping the fight standing. Over 90% of Chase Sherman's fights have taken place in the center of the cage at striking distance, which is absolutely where he is most comfortable. Now, the problem with that is that Chase Sherman's had 9 UFC fights, and he's only faced 9 takedown attempts. So he does have great takedown defense in terms of the percentage. He's successfully defended 7 of 9 takedowns for almost 78% takedown defense, and he's only getting taken down 0.31 times per 15 minutes and only being controlled 5% of his octagon time. However, I think that Parker Porter is not a great striker, and that if he wants to fight this fight smart, he's going to go out there and try to get takedowns. He's 50% on his takedown attempts thus far in the UFC, 2 of 4. And if he gets on top of Sherman, I think that he could stay there for a long time. We haven't seen Sherman's grappling tested much. And I think if Porter does test it, that he's going to find a lot of success there. And in addition to that, when I look at just the finish stats and things of that nature, we look at Parker Porter has one of the best inside the distance lines for an underdog here. You would have to go up to Sasha Palatnikov at 7,700 to find somebody who has a better percentage to win inside the distance. So not only do we have some grappling upside, not only do we have a situation where maybe Sherman, we don't know how good he's going to be in the grappling if it really does get tested, if the fight gets put there. If it does get put there, we could see Porter not only racking up some points, but potentially winning 2 out of 3 rounds and really stealing some nice points for you from the 7,000 salary position. So I'm going with Porter, but I wanted to talk about one other thing here too. You guys were talking about Brahimaj and how ridiculous it was that he didn't try any takedowns in his first fight. I went back and I watched that fight today, and I particularly listened to Brahimaj's corner in between rounds because I wanted to see if they got in his face and said, hey man, why aren't you shooting takedowns? The only advice that Brahimaj's corner was giving him was striking advice. So I don't even know if those guys at Fortis even had it in the game plan for him to even shoot a takedown against Max Griffin. So maybe that's the corner's problem. Maybe they wanted to get some striking experience at the UFC level. And if you think that they're going to smarten up, and you fucking hope that they will, then maybe he will shoot some takedowns here. Maybe he will go to his grappling. Brahimaj has won 100% of his fights inside the distance by submission. So if the game plan changes there, I think we're going to see Brahimaj maybe be a little bit under-owned, and why wouldn't he be after showing that horrible fight IQ in the first fight? So I think it's one of the more interesting fights is that Brahimaj Palatnikov. I love the underdog call on Palatnikov by Luke because it's going to be a great leverage play like he mentioned. But I also believe that if Brahimaj goes to the grappling this time like he should, he could see a very high percentage of a chance of finishing this fight inside the distance.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember watching a Brahimaj fight a couple fights ago, and his corner, he takes somebody down, and his corner's yelling at him to stand up. I'm like, what? Why would you tell him to stand up? So I don't know what's going on with this corner. You got to think, especially after the last fight, that they'll get their shit together. So anything else that stuck out to you guys for the dogs? All right, do want to take some time and shout out the chat. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. We do have Chase, we have Nigel, we have Bout Better, we have Monk in here as well. Kobe, we have Z in the chat. Also, Die Hard MMA. What is up, Clint? We have a Dirty Reg. Also, Aldo as well, saying he likes Lingo. We also have Michael as well. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you guys can hit the like, that would be much, much appreciated. Tune in every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And we will move on to our favorite GPP plays here. So GPP, we're looking for high upside, we're looking for high ceiling, and we're looking for a fighter that could potentially win you a tournament here. And let's start with Luke.
Yep. With that, we're looking for high ceilings, and I'm going Chase Sherman, 9.2K. He has the second highest inside the distance line on the slate at plus 105. Don't want to completely rehash what I said in terms of the fight to target being Sherman and Porter, but I really think that calf kick is going to be here for him in this fight, and I think he's probably going to get Porter out early. Once again, we're trying to win a tournament. There's definitely some, I think, variance with Sherman. Weezy kind of touched on the grappling component of this fight as well. Haven't seen much of that. Sherman gets hit in the face a lot. He has been knocked out multiple times. It is heavyweight, so that always adds more inherent variance to just the general outcome in and of itself. But at 9.2K, I think we know what we're going to get from Chase Sherman. We have a solid sample size of fights to know exactly what he does, where he excels, where he doesn't. I think he's going to maximize his win condition here, and I think he gets Porter out most likely early and can be the guy to be your horse in terms of winning a tournament.
Yeah, I like it. I like Sherman personally. Parker Porter has never lost by decision. All of his losses do come inside the distance, and Sherman has like a 93% finish rate. I think he has like one decision win. So yeah, safe to say if Sherman does win, there's a really good chance it is inside the distance. For me, my favorite tournament play is going to be Ramiz Brahimaj. And we kind of talked about it quite a bit so far, but if he comes in here and he fights like he had, prior to the UFC, I think he scores very, very well. This guy's wrestling is legit. This guy's grappling is legit. 100% finish rate, 100% submission rate. Palatnikov has been submitted before. Palatnikov's takedown defense isn't great. And I think if he does come in here with a very smart game plan, I think he's very live for an early finish. But there are question marks about his IQ. There are question marks of what happens if this fight does get extended. But I'm going to take that upside. I think he has a very good chance, if he does fight smart, get it down to the mat, to get an early submission win. Even on the feet, like Palatnikov, he has a very, very bad chin. I've seen him hurt in multiple fights. And Brahimaj, although he has no knockouts, he does have some solid power, so I can maybe see like a club and sub situation as well. But, I'm going back to him. I was heavy on him last time against Max Griffin because I thought he'd come in there and go for takedowns like crazy. Did not happen, so I'm going right back to it, and I'm hoping he can kind of bounce back and get a big score here. So I do like Ramiz Brahimaj as my favorite tournament play. How about you? How about you, Z?
I'm gonna say Pantoja again. Fight to target, kind of similar to Luke in that sense. But yeah, once again, I think he can stay on top, potentially submit Royval. I think he can box Royval up, and I just see his process being a lot better. Like he's a guy. Pantoja's a guy who I remember, like when Manel Kopp made his debut, I was just like, damn, that's a rough one. Pantoja is a serious professional with a well-rounded skill set, a grappling background, a grappling first fighter who has developed really good boxing. So yeah, I think Pantoja is very live for a finish here.
And we already said Luke, Weezy. There you go.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on this one, Brady. My guy is going to be Ramiz Brahimaj this week, and I guess that means that you and I will be the two people screaming at the TV about 2 minutes left in the second round going, will you please fucking shoot a takedown? So, yeah, it always is you and I doing that, Brady. It's always you and I going, why won't this guy shoot a takedown? So I'm going with Brahimaj. The reasons I'm going with Brahimaj is he's got about, I would say, according to my spreadsheet here, the 4th best inside the distance line on the card, but he's also the cheapest in terms of those 4 inside the distance lines. But he has the best first round prop out of all the guys that are fighting this weekend. So he's got the exact same first round prop as William Knight. He's got a better first round prop than Chase Sherman. He's got a better first round prop than anybody else on the card. So at 8,500, if he does, and it's a big if, shoot the takedowns, get it to the grappling realm where he is definitely finishing fights, I think that at 8,500, Brahimaj has the most upside for a mid-priced favorite to really end up on that optimal lineup should he do what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, I'm with you, Z. I'm hoping he goes for I don't want to be yelling at the TV, but we'll see what happens. Anything else that stuck out to you guys?
I would just echo. Sorry, Weezy, go ahead.
I was going to say that I actually echoed the Pantoja pick and the Sherman pick by Luke, but you go ahead, Z.
I was just going to say I support Luke's Sherman pick. I'm using him as well, and I might be betting on him to get an early finish as well. I think Porter is just way too hittable. He's there to be hit, and I think Sherman can kind of have a field day. I think Sherman's playing a much higher level game on the feet, so I would look for him to get an early finish and probably be good in GPPs.
Yeah, I think
let me just add something to that real quick. I mean, we've both been talking. I liked Parker Porter as an underdog at 7,000. All of you guys like Chase Sherman at 9,200. I think that what that's telling us is that we should probably be placing an inside or just a fight doesn't go to decision ticket on this one, because whoever gets their way, I think, is finishing their opponent.
Yeah, I like that, and I think there's a lot of money coming in, like on the over 2.5, and also on the fight goes to decision. So I'm gonna kind of wait back and maybe I'll place a violence bet. But yeah, I'm with Z there. I do like Sherman inside the distance. I think it's plus 105, plus 110, and then also Sherman by KO is something I'm gonna be looking at as well. So we shall get into our favorite cash plays. We will start with Luke. What is your favorite cash play?
Yeah, probably no surprises here. Going with the main event favorite, Jared Cannonier at 8.7K. With the potential of 25 minutes here, I like him since moving down to 185 pounds. His worst score in a W is 92 points and has the 5th best inside distance line on the whole slate. I know Gastelum isn't the easiest of guys to get out of there, but I do like Cannonier's kicking game. He actually is the more efficient striker of the two. So at 8.7, he has been finished a couple times. Kelvin does have finishes. I get that, but largely it's been to kind of some of the bigger hitters, the Dominic Reyeses, and even back in his heavyweight days. I think we're seeing, a really solid version of Jared Cannonier right now. And he actually, in his last 3 wins, does have 3 knockdowns as well to boot. So over 25 minutes at 8.7K. Gastelum is, like I said, isn't the biggest finisher historically. So at least in terms of this particular matchup, I think there's certain things that Cannonier can do to give him some trouble. So at 8.7, he's my favorite cash play that I think has kind of less risk than some of the people in the 9K range in Knight, Sherman, and Kelleher, who I think are better for GPPs.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on Cannonier in GPPs and tournaments?
I definitely think you can use him for sure. It's a difficult fight in the sense of that from a GPP perspective in terms of how he'll actually score, though, which is why I guess I'm less bullish on him for GPPs, at least in the sense of my official prediction of the fight. I actually don't think he does get Gastelum out of there, and he just wins a striking based decision, which might be enough. It could, but depending on how that 9K range does, which we've kind of talked about tonight, has an immense amount of volatility also associated with it. It's tough. So I think he's definitely an option to use in target, but in GPPs, but I don't necessarily know if I would load up on it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. My favorite cash play is going to be some disagreement here, and it's going to be Mark Madsen for me. I think he has a ton of upside. The guy averages 8 takedowns per 15 minutes. Of course, you guys mentioned all the red flags, the experience edge for Guida, the striking edge. A bunch of edges for him, the cardio advantage as well. But Mark Madsen, if he does win the fight, you got to admit that he's probably going to score very well. He's probably going to get a ton of takedowns. And even in a loss, I can see him still, winning those first round and a half, first round, getting a ton of takedowns. Maybe Guida does finish him in the third. Maybe Guida does squeak out those last two. But, at that point, I do think Madsen's going to rack up a ton of takedowns, a ton of control time. And I think he has a decent ceiling. And, this is more of a cash play for me because I do like some of the other guys in the 9K range a little bit more. You guys mentioned all the red flags, but I think Mark Madsen, at the very least, even like in a decision loss or maybe a late third round loss, I do think he has a solid floor to go out there and get multiple takedowns and control time. So give me Mark Madsen. And I also think he's going to be very high owned as well. So in cash, I'm going to eat the chalk there and get my takedowns. Weezy, what is your favorite?
I'm going to go with Boone Kelleher here. In terms of $9,000, he has the third best money line out of the crew here. He's got the third best inside the distance line, and he's cheaper than the other two guys who have the better inside the distance lines in Knight and Sherman. And I just feel like the Knight, Cherant, and the Sherman Porter fight are a little bit higher variance fights, being light heavyweight and heavyweight fights. Those kind of like, they usually just balance on whoever lands the hardest shot. While I think Kelleher is just going to be more skilled everywhere than Pilarte. Pilarte's lost his last two, and the fight before that in the Contender Series, I mean, he was about 1 second away from being finished in that one. I don't think he's UFC level, and Kelleher is just way more experienced. I see Kelleher having probably the best chance to win of the 4 9,000 priced fighters. He's got the third best inside the distance line of those 4 9,000 fighters. And in my opinion, he's got the best chance to win out of all of them. So for the cash game, I'm going to go with Kelleher.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm pretty high on Kelleher myself this week. And how about you, Z? What is your favorite cash play?
Same as Weezy. I've actually got a bet on Kelleher's money line at -162. I put like 170 on that. And I'm also targeting his inside the distance. It's like around +125 last I looked. I just think there's a huge level gap here, like huge experience gap. He is going to have to overcome some attributes, but he's younger and larger than him. But as far as experience and skill goes, I just think Brian Kelleher is going to be much calmer in there. Might have to weather a bit of a storm just to get his reads down and figure out that distance. But then once he does, I think he finishes Pilarte at a pretty high clip, be it knockout or submission. If Pilarte's shooting sloppy shots, he can wrap the neck. I think he can out grapple him too, like out wrestle him, control him if he wants to. And on the feet, I think the left hook's going to be money. Domingo often drops his hands in the exchanges. So yeah, give me Kelleher for what is it? Cash play? Yeah, for the cash play.
There you go. Yeah. The only thing that did concern me was going to be the 10-inch reach of Pilarte, but outside of that, that's my only concern. I think Kelleher is better, honestly, everywhere, better striking, better grappling, and just the competition level is just night and day. Like you take a look at some of these guys' losses, and it's just night and day. So yeah, I like Kelleher as well as you. And Weezy, anything else that stuck out to you guys for a cash play?
For a cash play, I kind of like Roosevelt Roberts too, actually, just because I think he's got a pretty good chance to win this fight. I think he's I think he's going to be better everywhere. So I like him as a cash play too, and he's got a pretty good finishing upside with the submission potential. So I like him as well.
I like it. All right, so we will now get into our favorite value play, and we will start with Luke. What is your favorite value play for UFC Vegas 34?
Yep, I'm going Clay Guida down at 7.1K. He's only +145 to win this fight. Kind of rehashed everything with my fade on Madsen, but ultimately my take is that obviously there's clear salary value based, at least in comparison to the odds here. And I think Guida is easily his toughest test to date and has a skill set that I think can potentially test Mark Madsen, coupled with the fact when we're just talking about dogs and we're kind of dipping down to this lower range. I like to know also kind of what I'm getting from the fighter. And at this point, we have a really large sample size of Clay Guida, and we know what to expect from him at this point. And he has 15 minutes of gas where Mark Madsen, there's some hesitation to say he doesn't, especially when he's going to be facing the type of wrestling resistance, in my opinion, that he will be facing in this fight as well, which he just hasn't faced before. So at 7.1K, to me, a Guida win actually looks like him potentially having some wrestling success on Marco Madsen, potentially outstriking Marco Madsen and just outworking him more so in the later rounds. I see Madsen having a pretty strong start, but I think Guida might be able to take over the fight as he slows down. And I think one important thing to note here, we have not seen Marco Madsen on his back at all. And this isn't we've seen strong wrestlers in the past look completely lost on bottom. Cough, cough, Sarah McMahon. So I'm just saying, I think it's interesting that if Guida is able to get in top position, well, we're going to get some serious questions answered on Madsen. Maybe he is, he's just good enough in the scrambles. He'll be able to get up and do that type of deal. But yeah, at 7.1K, I think I'm going to be overweight to Guida pretty significantly this week.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. What happens if Madsen does end up on his back? And that's kind of why I shied away from the money line of Madsen, because we really just don't know. We've never seen him on his back. So I'm glad you brought up that point there. Z, what is your favorite value play this week?
I've actually got Saldana. The line is moving the other way. I expected money to actually come in on Saldana, which maybe I should have been able to foresee because he just had a rough fight and Austin just got his first win in the UFC. So there's that kind of recency bias, I guess you could say. But yeah, I honestly think he's going to light Lingo up, guys. I have a bet on him. I also bet him to win via knockout. I think stylistically, it's a really tough fight for Austin Lingo here. He's going to want to try to pressure into Saldana, who can strike effectively on the back foot. He also enjoys exchanging in the pocket, whereas Saldana is more the edge of the pocket, down the pipe. And I see him giving Lingo all kinds of trouble. So it's kind of weird because the line is getting better, so I don't know if it's a value play per se, but I just think from where I've capped the fight and where the money line is and where Saldana's price is, I really like him. I really like him this week.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about this fight that much, but I think it's going to be a pretty important fight to target. I did take a shot on the under. Luis Saldana, his last fight, I believe that was his first decision win against Jordan Griffin. Prior to that, he has finished, I think, like 93% of his wins, a ton of submissions on his record as well. And yeah, I see a finish in this fight either way. Austin Lingo brings the pressure. He throws heat himself. So I think it's a pretty solid fight to target. I know we haven't talked about it much, but 8,300 for Saldana, not 7,900 for Lingo. I think there's a finish. So yeah, I don't hate that shot whatsoever. Weezy, what is your favorite value play?
Yeah, I put down there Ramiz Brahimaj at 8,500 because I think he's a very economically priced favorite. But I want to pivot off of that and talk about Kelvin Gastelum here, because if you're of the opinion that the favorites actually win almost all these fights of this card, and I'm I'm picking almost every favorite this week. I'm not finding a lot of dogs that I like. Well, when I look into my DraftKings spreadsheet, I see that Jared Cannonier gives up 3.23 DraftKings points per minute on average, and Gastelum scores 2.79. So if we talk about the fact that Kelvin Gastelum has never been knocked out and that Jared Cannonier really isn't submitting anybody, we could probably see that this fight's going to go 5 rounds because Gastelum's chin has never been cracked thus far, and he's fought a ton of studs. So if we do think that fight goes to decision, and we know that Gastelum scores about 2.8 and Jared Cannonier gives up about 3.23 points per minute, maybe we can just make an estimate and say that Kelvin Gastelum, even in a losing effort, scores 3 DraftKings points per minute in a 25-point fight. That would give him 75 points in a decision loss at a $7,500 salary. So to me, that's value, especially if you don't like a lot of the underdogs like me this week. I'm on most of the favorites. You might just have to go with an underdog that will go the distance and will score a lot of DraftKings points per minute while they're in the cage. Gastelum's going to be in the cage for 25 minutes in comparison to a max of 15 for any of the other underdogs. So I think we can find some value there with Gastelum.
Yeah, definitely solid point on top of that. There's a $1,200 savings going with Gastelum as well. And I kind of talked about on my DraftKings video, if both these guys were to win by decision, I'm kind of, I kind of think Gastelum has a better chance of finding the optimal at 7,500, whereas Cannonier, if he wins by decision, does he, do enough to get on the optimal lineup, especially with guys like Chase Sherman up there, guys like even William Knight, Boone Kelleher, guys like that. If he wins a decision, which, a lot of people, including me, think it does go to decision, kind of like Gastelum a little bit more, at least in terms of tournaments. So yeah, definitely like that you brought that up. Weezy, for me, my value play is going to be same as Luke, and it's going to be Clay Guida. There's just a lot of question marks on Mark Madsen. He's going to have a striking disadvantage, a cardio disadvantage, and like Luke said, what happens if he does get taken down and he is on his back? So 7,100, yeah, if Guida does win, I do think it probably scores pretty decent, at least enough to get on the optimal lineup. So 7,100, if Mark Madsen does slow down, which he very well could. A lot of people, including me, think that if this fight does get extended, if it does get into the late second round, third round, that Mark Madsen is going to slow down. At that point, maybe Guida can take that third round and maybe get a third round finish as well. So for me, for value, 7,100, I do like Clay Guida there. Anything else that stuck out to you guys?
I'll just say I agree with some value on Gastelum there. It's kind of weird, like doing tape for that fight was pretty much just doing tape on Rob Whittaker. And he is just, it blew me away again. Like I always knew how good he was, but watching him just dismantle both these guys back to back, it was something to behold. But as far as value on Kelvin, I agree. It's like he's got more durability than Cannonier, but Cannonier probably has more power. So I could see Cannonier finishing him. Like he is there to be hit, but never been finished before. So yeah, I like that fight trickling over to a decision, and Kelvin probably has some value.
Yep, agreed. So we will go to our dart throw here, and we will start with Z. What is your dart throw of the week?
Sure, I took Porter. It is a heavyweight, sloppy heavyweight banger. Chase Sherman, not the best fighter in the world, but I am certainly leaning with Sherman. So tread lightly here, but if Porter were to win, it'd probably score really highly, and he's super cheap. So yeah, give me Parker Porter for a little dart throw there.
Don't hate it. Heavyweight fight. Luke, what is your dart throw?
Same as well. Obviously, my favorite fight to target was Sherman and Porter, and my favorite GPP play was Chase Sherman. But conversely, it's just a fight I want to have a lot of exposure to as well. Like I said, heavyweight has the second best inside the distance line of any dog at plus 275. To me, what a Porter W looks like is a lot of strikes, potentially finding a knockout. Maybe he is able to get on top of Sherman, rack up some top time. He is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He has submissions. He will hunt submissions. I don't think he's overtly great in terms of scrapping, but nonetheless, has credentials on paper to do so. And to Weezy's point, we just haven't seen a ton of Chase Sherman on his back in general in terms of how he actually reacts in those situations. So at 7K, heavyweight fight, value on Sherman. Porter's inside the distance line, potentially has a wrestling path in the fight. I think Porter is worth some shares.
There you go. And like Weezy mentioned earlier, that under kind of has me intrigued as well. For my dart throw, Weezy's going to love this one. Weezy's going to love it. My dart throw is actually William Knight, 9,400. And this kind of reminds me of the Melissa Gatto call last week where, it was a pick'em, right? She was 8,800 as a pick'em. And William Knight, he's like minus 183 right now. And money keeps pouring in on Fabio Cherant. I think by fight time, he might be around maybe like minus 150, minus 160, maybe even less than that. So there's so much money coming in on Fabio. I see him at minus 183. And people are really high on Fabio this week. I don't really see why. And, 9,400, nobody's going to play him. Nobody is going to play William Knight. And if you take a look at it, William Knight is a finisher. You take a look at it, 89% finish rate. Fabio Cherant has been finished in both of his losses, one by knockout to Alexa Kamor in a fight on the Contender Series where he literally gets outlanded like 50-6. Throws nothing, shoots for no takedowns, gets knocked out there, and then just got submitted by Alonzo Menafield. William Knight, if he does win, I think it's inside the distance, and I think he's going to be the lowest owned out of that 9K range. I think Mark Madsen's going to be higher owned. I think Chase Sherman's going to be higher owned. I think Boone Kelleher is going to be higher owned. On top of that, I think Jared Cannonier is going to be higher owned, so on and so forth. So at 9,400, lowest owned fighter up in that range, I think William Knight has potential to beat Fabio Cherant. I'm just not high on Cherant. He doesn't really bring much to the table. No striking, no wrestling. What does he do well? I mean, he's a good grappler, but I think William Knight can, keep this on the feet, knock this guy out, or even take him down, land some ground and pound. So,
hey, did you just say Fabio Cherant's a good grappler?
He's a solid grappler. That's the best attribute of him, right?
He's got a ton of submissions, dude. That's the only way he wins.
That's the only thing he's somewhat good at.
Yeah. And Everett Cummins is 15-0.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't understand all this money coming in on Fabio Cherant. But at the same time, I guess people might be fading William Knight. So again, my low end dart throw is going to be William Knight, 90 for 100, highest priced on the slate. I think nobody's going to have him. Any other?
I love that, Brady. I'm going to jump on that too.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Any other thoughts, guys?
Yeah, you haven't given me my chance here yet, and I got the best one out of all of them right here. We're going with the Uzbekistan stand-up. Your boy Saeed Yokub Kakaramanov is going to be Uncle Weezy's low-owned dart throw of the week. I watched some.
Who the fuck is that guy?
I watched some tape on this guy today. Dude, he chucks heat. You should have seen the knockout over Asker. I mean, it was clean. The dude throws heavy leather, and he keeps throwing it into the third round. He had a 3-round war with Umar Nurmagomedov just a couple of years ago. He's fought some decent competition. He's 8-2. He's taken the fight on short notice, and his win equity might be just chucking bombs and hoping it hits Trevin Jones's chin. And, Jones hasn't had much time to prepare for this guy. I think he's going to be ultra low owned. So I definitely think that there's some, there's some leverage there to be owning Saeed Rahub in this one. And then also, I just want to say, I might just go with some shares of Josiane Nunez as well, because I'm still not entirely sure that that's not Joe Benavidez in drag. And if it is, I think Josiane is just going to go out there and absolutely starch Bia Malecki if that's the case. So I want to have some shares of Nunez as well. But yeah, those are my dart throws for the week.
I like it. Okay, so the new thing that we are implementing in this show is going to be, we're all going to put in a lineup, and we're going to see who does best week after week. We'll see who won the week, and then we'll also see who's winning out of the total of the week. So we will start with Weezy. What is your lineup for the week?
Okay, going from most expensive to cheapest, my lineup this week is going to be Boone Kelleher at 9,000, Jared Cannonier at 8,700. We got Ramiz Brahimaj and his hopefully 5 takedown attempts at 8,500. We got Rosie Roberts, 8,400. Luis Saldana at 8,300. And Parker Porter bringing up the rear at 7,000.
I like it. Z, what is your lineup?
All right, starting at the top, I've got Chase Sherman. I've got Brian Kelleher. I've got Pantoja. What's next? I've got Luis Saldana. And then I took Gastelum and Guida. Gastelum is the one I'm sketchiest about in there. Not sure he's going to win, whatever the case may be, but hopefully he gets to decision, scores some points. And again, hopefully Guida comes through. But the first 4 I mentioned, I'm pretty solid on those guys. Okay.
And then my lineup is going to be Ramiz Brahimaj, 8,500. Brian Kelleher, 9,000. Bay Malecki, 8,600. Vinc Pichel, 8,200. Roosevelt Roberts, 8,400. And then Brandon Royval, 7,300. And Luke, what is yours?
Yeah, I got to say, you caught me off a little off guard before we started. So I threw this together in about 10 minutes. So there's a good chance I get rolled this week. But yeah, I'm going with Sherman, Cannonier, Ramiz Brahimaj, Roosevelt Roberts, Austin Lingo, and Clay Guida.
There you go. So we'll spend the last 5 minutes answering any questions you guys have in the chat. Type your questions and we will get to them. A fight that we didn't really talk about was that Malecki versus Nunez fight. Z, what are your thoughts on that one?
I just think it's funny, like Bo Malecki, Bo is beautiful in French and Malecki is big in Tagalog, in the Philippine language. So big, beautiful. I mean,
Yeah, I totally.
Tinfoil hat? No?
Yeah.
That's the best analysis we've had in the last 54 minutes. That is gold.
I watched that last fight of Bo Malecki's, and poor Veronica Macedo is in there. Poor Macedo couldn't do anything. The corner wouldn't pull her out of the fight. She should have been pulled out of that fight, She couldn't land. She couldn't. It was just a pure size thing. It was very it was annoying to watch because you're like, what can Macedo do? And Malecki didn't do anything that impressive. She's just huge and walked her down and bullied her. So, yeah.
She is huge. What is another fight we didn't really talk about much? The Saldana Lingo we touched on a little bit. The Roberts fight we touched on a little bit. I think we touched on just about anything. Chase Collins says Nunez KO. We'll give that to Weezy. You think Nunez can get a KO here?
Man, Bea Malecki isn't an 0-0 soccer mom who's taking a $50 check to get in the cage, so I don't think we're going to see a KO out of her. I mean, those are basically the types of women that she has beaten. The one fight that Nunez had that was against a UFC level opponent, she lost, but it was against a very good one. I believe it was Taylor Santos. So, it's just hard to know with these regional scene ladies coming up, and we haven't seen that much of a Malecki either. So I believe that Malecki's Muay Thai experience, her length, her massive size advantage that she has here is going to be enough to win a striking battle. So, yeah, I wouldn't have much in Nunez here, but, you just don't know. She's going to be super low owned because I don't think anybody knows anything about her. She doesn't have really any signature wins that I can think of. So she'll probably be way under owned. There could be some leverage if you want to have some shares of her. And like I said, if that's Joe Benavidez, then you're going to probably cash.
Luke, All the Smoke wants to know, he wants to pick Clay in the third round. Is he crazy?
I don't think so. I think that's probably one of the better dart throws of the card if you're looking to target a round prop. Said the one time we have seen Madsen face some resistance and get extended, he really slowed down, and that was from a striking-based opponent and not a grappling-based opponent. Clay will jump on those guillotines unsuccessfully more often than not, but he will try. And we just really haven't seen Madsen put in any bad grappling-based spots. So I think that's actually probably one of the better round flyers on the card.
Let's give this one to Z. Z, best two-leg parlay most likely to hit.
The best two-leg parlay. I'm going to say put Kelleher in there as the first leg. Very confident. And then probably William. I don't want to say that. How can I say William Knight is most likely to cash, But let's be real. I think that's kind of a lopsided fight. And I do see the line movement here. It's kind of perplexing to me. Is there somebody inside the camp give away something, or, is there some – I don't know. So, but to answer your question, I'll go with Kelleher, and then man, that's tough. I'd say either Sherman or William Knight.
Sherman, yeah. William Knight opened up at minus 335, something crazy like that. Unbelievable. I
mean, I can understand people pushing back on that, but it kind of makes sense for this spot specifically. You know what I mean? He should ragdoll Cherant, should he not?
Yeah, I'm not a big Cherant guy myself, but I don't know.
I bet him last time out like a mook, but
PSSA asked, who is this week's Penne? I'll answer it. I think it could be maybe Bea Malecki, maybe that Nunez fight, maybe that fight in general. Bea Malecki, she has scored good thus far in her two fights. I think she scored 100 and then 82 in her submission win against Santana. So maybe Bea Malecki. I do like Malecki myself. She's going to have a 7-inch height advantage, 7-inch reach advantage, decent ground game. If she can't get on top, Nunez cannot get off her back to save her life, and she's going to be much, much smaller. So I'm going to say, if I had to pick who's going to be the Penne, I'll say Bea Malecki there. Let's see what we got here. The best. Don't know what that means. Any opinion on Trevin Jones by finish? Weezy, do you have any take on this one?
That's a great question. I mean, the Kakramanov kid is taking the fight on short notice. It's already Tuesday. I think he just got slotted to fight him maybe late last night. So we're talking about 5 days notice for Kakramanov. But like I said, this guy has fought really tough competition. And I don't even know, has he ever been finished? I don't think I have it here.
I think he has, maybe once.
His last fight, flying knee.
Oh, okay. So he's only been finished once. Okay. Yeah. And Jones has got a lot of power in that lead right hand of his. He's a southpaw, but the knockouts that he's gotten were with the right hand. And he's also got a really good top game. So I think that Jones could potentially win by submission if he takes Kakramanov down and keeps him there. I also think we could see a knockout. But like I said, Kakramanov is actually pretty tough out. So I could definitely see this one going the distance as well. I wouldn't touch the time props on this one. I think I just want to be over-owned to Kakramanov because he probably will be less than 10% owned. So I think I'd like to over-own him and probably be right around the field with Jones.
And Chase, to answer your question, yes, they will add him to DraftKings. I'm not sure when. Hopefully it is soon. To end it here, we'll go with our quick picks. So quick picks for the card, and let's start with Luke.
Actually, come back to me. Let me pull up.
Let's start with the Z.
Come back to me.
Well, you finishing tape study there, Luke? While we're live on the air? What's going on here, bud? All right,
I got to get my topology up.
Starting at the top. Despite using Kelvin in my lineup here, I am going to take – that's a tough one. I'm going to take Cannonier, though. That's a very tough pick for me, though, but I will lean Cannonier. I'm going to say Guida, Sherman. I'll say Trevin Jones, but I haven't looked into the opponent yet. Man, Pichel and Hubbard is hard, too. I'll go with Hubbard. I'll go with Pantoja, Saldana, Kelleher, Bo Malaki, William Knight. Fade the fight, but I'll pick Roberts, and then I'll go with Brahimaj.
Okay, for me, I'll take Trevin Jones as of now. I have not tape studied it at all, so take that as you will. Jerry Cannonier, Mark Madsen, Shea Sherman, Vince Pichel, Brandon Royval, William Knight, Austin Lingo, Brian Kelleher, Ramiz Brahimaj, Bay Malecki, and Roosevelt Roberts. Weezy, how about you?
I'm going with Jared Cannonier, Marco Madsen, Parker Porter for the upset. Vince Pichel, Pantoja, Saldana, Boone Kelleher, Bay Malecki, William Knight reluctantly. Rosie Roberts is one of my more confident picks, along with Ramiz Brahimaj. And I'm going to go with Trevin Jones.
And then Luke, finish it up.
I'm going with Cannonier. I'm going with the Carpenter, Clay Guida for the upset, Chase Sherman, Trevin Jones, Vince Pichel, Pantoja, Austin Lingo, Brian Kelleher, Bay Malecki, William Knight, Roosevelt Roberts, and Palatnikov for the upset.
Sounds good. All right, guys. We did it around an hour here. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you guys can leave a like on your way out, to be much, much appreciated. Also, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio so you do not miss out on all the other content throughout the week. We will be back next week, next Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you guys again, and we will see you soon. And good luck for UFC Vegas 34.